Hey, are you ready to face one of the darkest truths hidden from us in modern history?
For America, wars have almost never been just about survival, justice, or freedom.
Every major conflict has also turned into a massive financial opportunity. While ordinary people sent their sons to the front lines and families rationed food, a handful of bankers and industrialists quietly turned crisis into profit and made a fortune. And here's the most shocking part. This wasn't just an accident. It was a deliberately built system.
A system that still affects everything today, from the value of the money in your pocket to your grocery bill, the taxes you pay, and inflation.
You think wars are over, but the financial machine never stops running. Now, let's look together at how this machine was built, step by step. Because once you see it, you'll never look at the world the same way again. You ready? Then let's dive in.
The core truth is still the same. For America, wars have almost always been about more than just survival or ideals. They've been huge, recurring financial opportunities. And once you see how the system was built step by step, you can't unsee it.
Let's start with World War I, but zoom in a bit closer. In 1914, when Europe erupted, the US was officially neutral. But neutrality didn't mean sitting on our hands. American banks and companies started lending and selling to the Allies, especially Britain and France, on a scale that was almost unimaginable. J.P. Morgan & Co. alone arranged a $500 million loan to Britain in 1915. That's roughly $15 billion in today's dollars. They didn't just lend money, they became the official purchasing agent for the British government. That meant American steel mills, wheat farmers, and munitions makers suddenly had guaranteed customers across the ocean.
Here's the key detail. These loans weren't cheap. Interest rates were high, and the contracts were structured so that if the Allies won, the debt would be repaid with interest. If they lost, the risk was on the British and French governments, not Wall Street. So when America officially entered the war in 1917, it wasn't just about making the world safe for democracy. It was also about protecting the massive financial bets Wall Street had already placed on an Allied victory.
Then came the Liberty Bonds. Once we were in the fight, the government needed to borrow even more. They launched a huge propaganda campaign. Posters, parades, movie stars, even school kids collecting pennies for thrift stamps that turned into bonds. By the end of the war, over $21 billion in Liberty bonds had been sold to the public, about $500 billion in today's money. This was the first time an entire population was financially mobilized for war on this scale. But here's the quiet part. While ordinary Americans bought bonds with their savings, the real profits went to the corporations and banks supplying the war machine. Factory profits skyrocketed, and the financial elite gained unprecedented power over governments. World War II took everything to the next level. By 1941, the US was already producing tanks, planes, ships, and ammo at a pace that stunned the world. When Pearl Harbor hit, the economy was already on war footing. The government issued war bonds again. Over 85 million Americans bought them, raising about $185 billion, roughly $3 trillion in today's dollars. That covered more than half the total war cost. But the real money machine was on the corporate side. Companies like Boeing, General Motors, Chrysler, Ford, and DuPont got massive cost-plus contracts. The government paid all their expenses plus a guaranteed profit margin. No matter how much they spent, they made money. Brand new factories were built with taxpayer dollars, then leased back to the companies for pennies. After the war, many of those plants were sold to the same corporations at bargain prices. The government essentially subsidized America's post-war industrial dominance. At the same time, the financial system itself was being rewritten. In 1944, at Bretton Woods, the dollar became the world's reserve currency, pegged to gold at $35 an ounce, with other currencies pegged to the dollar. How did the US pull this off? Because we emerged from the war with the only major economy still intact, the largest gold reserves, and the industrial capacity to back it up. Europe was in ruins. We didn't just win the war, we won the financial future. The Cold War made this permanent. From the late 1940s on, defense spending became a structural part of the economy. Eisenhower's 1961 warning about the military-industrial complex wasn't just a risk, it was already reality. Entire regions depended on bases, factories, and research labs tied to Pentagon contracts. Aerospace, electronics, shipbuilding, oil, whole industries were built around defense money.
Vietnam showed just how deep the addiction had become. The war cost over $150 billion in direct spending, about $1.2 trillion today. But the real number, including interest and long-term veteran care, is much higher. Defense contractors supplied everything: Huey helicopters, napalm, Agent Orange, M16s, at guaranteed prices. The Pentagon's budget kept growing even after we pulled out in 1975. The economic fallout was brutal. Johnson's guns and butter policy, fighting a war while expanding social programs, created massive deficits. Inflation spiked in the late 1960s and 1970s. In 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard completely. Now it was pure fiat, backed only by trust in the U.S. government and its military and economic power. Then, in the mid-1970s, came the petrodollar system. After the 1973 oil crisis, the U.S. cut a deal with Saudi Arabia. They'd price oil in dollars and invest surpluses in U.S. treasuries, and in return, we'd provide military protection. That arrangement, later extended to other Gulf states, ensured global demand for dollars even without gold backing. Oil control plus military dominance equals dollar supremacy. Fast forward to the 1991 Gulf War. The conflict was short, but defense stocks soared. Precision-guided munitions were showcased on live TV, basically a live infomercial for companies like Raytheon and Lockheed. War became a product demo. After 9/11, the war on terror took financialization to new heights. Afghanistan and Iraq together cost an estimated $8 trillion when you count everything: direct spending, veteran care, interest on borrowed money. That's more than World War II in today's dollars. Contractors like Halliburton, Blackwater, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Raytheon saw revenues explode. The government borrowed the money, the Fed kept interest rates low to manage the debt, and taxpayers footed the bill through higher deficits, inflation, and future tax burdens.
The pattern is clear. The U.S. rarely wins these wars in the classic sense. Vietnam ended in withdrawal. Iraq turned to chaos. Afghanistan ended with the Taliban back in power. But financially, the system always wins. Contracts get paid, debt gets rolled over, profits get banked. The outcome on the ground matters far less than the cash flow. Today, defense spending is around $900 billion a year, one of the biggest items in the federal budget. Entire congressional districts, states, and industries are built around it. Politicians protect jobs and campaign donations by safeguarding the Pentagon budget. Wall Street finances the debt. The machine keeps running, whether there's an active war or not. And the tools perfected in wartime, massive deficit spending, bond issuance, corporate bailouts, low interest rates to sustain debt, are now used in peacetime crises too. The 2008 financial crash, COVID stimulus, everything. Volatility isn't a bug, it's a feature. So here's the bottom line. Understanding this isn't just about history. It's about seeing how your paycheck, grocery bill, taxes, and the value of your savings are all tied to a system that treats conflict and crisis as economic opportunities for the few, while the rest of us pay the price. Next time you hear about another necessary intervention or see the defense budget climbing again, ask yourself, who's really profiting here? Because the answer is rarely the people being asked to sacrifice. That's the real financial education most folks never get. And once you have it, you start seeing the patterns everywhere.